In this problem, we're dealing with two special types of right triangle, and these are the kind of right triangles that are going to pop up again and again in geometry problems, and so it pays to really get to know them. One is this one here, this 30, 60, 90 triangle. So it's got a right angle, and then the other two angles are 60 and 30 degrees. This pops up over and over again in problems in geometry. And so what your math teacher wants you to do is memorize the ratio of the sides. So if you see a 30, 60, 90 triangle, its sides are always going to be in the ratio of 1 for the shortest side, 2 for the hypotenuse, and square root of 3 for the other leg. You can also think of this as sides of x, 2x, and square root of 3 times x, whichever makes most sense for you to think about. So, for example, if you knew the side that was the 1 side, that's your x value. You could figure out the 2 side and the square root of 3 side just by multiplying whatever that x value is, that length of this shortest side, by 2 and by the square root of 3. The other triangle to know about is this 45, 45, 90 triangle. This is an isosceles triangle. Those two 45-degree angles should tell you that it's got two legs that are the same length. Those sides are the 1 sides, and then the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 sides. So if you know the 1 side, you just multiply whatever that number is by the square root of 2. Let me show you how this works with these two problems. The 45, 45, 90 triangle problem here is a little bit easier because we have the 1 side. I think what's important to do first is just label the sides with the proportions. You've got your information here. This is sort of the real information about the triangle, the 8, and then D is the side we're solving for. But the proportions of the ideal or the unit triangle here are 1, 1, square root of 2. So now we're going to set up a proportion. We're going to say 8 is to 1 as D is to the square root of 2. And I can write that like this. 8 is to 1 as D is to the square root of 2. Now, when I set up this proportion, it's important that I organize it so in a consistent way. So you can see I have both sides of the same side of the triangle here on the left, and then the other two, the same side referred to on the right here. And then I have the real world or the problem information here, the 8 and the D, and I have the unit triangle proportions down in the bottom. As long as you've got it organized like that, you can solve this proportion for D and you'll get a correct answer. So what we would do next to solve is just cross multiply. So D equals 1 times D is D, and 8 times the square root of 2. And they want us to solve this for a decimal value and round to the nearest tenth. So I would just pull out my calculator and type in a 2 and a square root, and then multiply that by 8. And what I get is 11.3 if I round to the nearest tenth. Okay. Let's try the 30, 60, 90. This one was pretty easy because the 1 side we had the value for. So the square root of 2 side is just going to be that value, 8 times the square root of 2. So that's what we got there. In this one, we don't have the 1 side. We have the square root of 3 side over here, and the hypotenuse is what we're looking for, and that's the 2 side. Let me just label the sides with this sort of unit triangle. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, don't want to get that backwards, and square root of 3. And then we're going to set up a proportion here. So I'm going to take these two sides, 2 and A, and put them in a fraction. So 2 is to A as square root of 3 is to 6. Now, I set up this proportion a little bit differently than I set up the last one. In the last one, I had the proportion numbers on the bottom. Well, I put them on the top this time. That doesn't really matter as long as I'm consistent about it. The proportion numbers go on the top, the problem numbers go on the bottom. One side on this side of the equal sign, the other side on this side. As long as it's consistent, it will work. And then we can cross multiply. So I get 2 times 6 is 12, and A times the square root of 3. And then to solve for A, I just need to divide by the square root of 3. So let me do that on my calculator. I'm going to take 12 press divide, type in a 3, hit the square root, and press equals. And I get 6.9. So A equals 6.9. So that is how to work with special right triangles.